Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
And I'm Asana Kiatano.
And thank you for joining us this morning.
I can't believe that I'm back at work. It seems as though the weekend flew by so quickly, Marlene.
That's right.
It's like we just left on Friday evening and we're back. But
that's what happens when you have a long weekend.
It was an enjoyable weekend, but by and large uneventful.
Yeah.
So there's some kind of like a balance in between, you know. Yeah. Being laid back and enjoying that time you're spending with friends and family.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I do feel like it zipped by very quickly, and that's why I'm saying I had to remind myself, it's because last weekend you had an extended one. That's why we're here. But of course, it is the start of a brand new week and a lot to get into to be able to look at the week ahead. So we're going to start off with some motivation for this morning, and that means it's time for Eye Opener. And our eye opener, taken from dailyom.com, goes like this. We all have a genius within us, and when one of us doesn't develop or use our special gift, a cosmic void takes place. Each of us is born with a specific genius that was bestowed upon us, so we can do our part to make this world a better place. All of us have a role that we're uniquely suited for. Imagine our planet without trees, oceans, or clouds. In this same way, when one of us doesn't develop or use our special gift, a cosmic void takes place. It is important for all of us to try to find our special gift and discover how we can best express it. Ask others to name what they think is your most overlooked talent or character trait. Their answers may change your life. Explore these riches that are yours to express, and you may find yourself helping others discover and develop their own blessings. Acknowledge and appreciate the gifts you see in those around you. Our unique gifts are like golden rays of expression that can encircle the world with light.
So I will digress just slightly from the thrust of what the eye-opener is saying. And I will start my interpretation of the eye-opener by saying this, right? As parents, we should be able to find that gift in our children and be able to help them to harness and develop that gift or those gifts, right? Yeah. I say that in the context of my childhood growing up. Mm-hmm. There are three of us, my older brother, myself, and my younger brother. And so very early on, my parents kind of saw what we were each individually tuned into, so to speak. And so whereas my younger brother was into drawing and building, eventually he'd go on to become an architect engineer. I was into reading and writing, and here I am. And my older brother was into cooking. He was naturally gifted at cooking. He was always in the kitchen, you know, cooking up a storm and what have you. The point that I'm making here, Marlene, is that when you're able to identify that particular gift, or as I would put it, a special talent that you have, you need to have people around you who are able to help you to build on that. Mm-hmm. And once you're able to do that, then you can also begin to appreciate that everyone has a particular gift that he or she was born with. Mm-hmm. It manifests itself in various ways. Not all of us are academically inclined. Not all of us are manual in the way we go about doing things. But it's almost as if though every single individual is born with a unique talent that he or she has to find within themselves first. And once you're able to begin to show that, then people can rally around that and help them to become who they want to be based on exploiting that particular gift or talent.
No, I completely agree, and I think it's a good time to acknowledge that your parents were blessing to be able to do that, because very often we seem fixated on trying to, especially with children, chart them on an academic course versus being able to hone in on what they are most talented at. And for me, I think while it's absolutely crucial to do that with your children, I think it extends into adulthood too.
Yeah.
It's such an important practice to have, where you can be able to help people see their gifts. And not many people can do that. A lot of times you perhaps don't recognize your own skill sets or gifts that you've been blessed with. Sometimes we take it for granted or we doubt ourselves. Other times you're perhaps caught up with what you don't have, that you can't necessarily focus on the skills that you do have, the gifts that you do have. And that's why when we can empower each other, when we can be able to say to another person, good friend or just an acquaintance, this is something that I identify with you, that I don't know if you know, but you're really good at, or it really makes you a better person.
Yeah.
And if you've ever had somebody tell you something like that, it can be completely transforming. So I think it's a level of kindness that we develop towards each other.
Yeah.
And the idea of building everybody up. Because if you bring your best to the table, and so do I, we are far more productive in the end.
Sky's the limit, right?
That's right. And that's a great way to start on this Monday morning. And from talking about our special gifts to talking about what the skies will be blessing us with today. We have Catherine Cumberbatch on the line. Good morning.
Good morning, Marlene and Sonny. Good morning.
How are you today?
I am okay.
Oh.
Just say I'm blessed.
All right. We're happy to hear that. Well, tell us about our weather for today. What can we expect?
Okay, for today, Marlene and Sonny, we could expect mostly sunny skies today, and the high temperatures for today will range from 89 along the coast to 94 inland and 82 in the hills. And tonight, the skies will be partly cloudy to cloudy, and the temperatures will drop to 81 along the coast, 75 inland, and 68 in the higher elevation. As it pertains to shower, the shower activity will be generally isolated, except for the south, where you could expect a few more showers and isolated thunderstorms to develop during the night and early morning hours. The winds will be coming out of the east at 10 to 20 knots, and the sea state will be choppy. And for the outlook for Tuesday and Tuesday night is for similar weather conditions to prevail. As it pertains to the sargassum forecast, sargassum mats continue to affect our beaches, and the chances of it for sargassum to continue will remain high for the next few days. And the tropical weather outlook now, there's a low-pressure system about 150 miles east of Barbados that have a very high chance of becoming a tropical depression later today or tonight, as this system moves west-northwest at 10 miles per hour. Elsewhere in the basin, we don't have any tropical cyclone formation is not expected during the next 48 hours. And that's about it.
Okay. And the trajectory of that system there?
Is west-northwest. It is good for Belize.
Okay. All right.
All right. For now, it's good for Belize.
I was
As far
going
as
to
we
say.
project for the next 48 couple days, and projection is showing that it will continue on its west-northwest rock.
All right. Of course, we're grateful for you guys there at the Met Service for keeping us updated, and thank you so much for that update for today.
Okay, thank you, and you guys stay safe.
All right. Bye.
Yeah.
So at least we get to enjoy a little bit more sunshine today.
Yeah, except
which
if you're
is
in the
good.
south.
Yeah. It sucks if you're in the south, but
But they're probably used to it. We are in the rainy
Yeah.
season, so you do get a shower here or there. We saw that over the weekend, but it's been mostly sunny.
yeah,
Yeah.
there we go.
All right, and with that, we are going to get moving into talking about some of the major stories coming out of last week and what we can look forward to in the week ahead. So let's shift gears to Eye on the News.
So I wanted to begin our conversation this morning by reflecting a bit on what happened in St. Vincent recently with the incident where the head of state, Ralph Gonsalves, was injured during sort of a state of protest regarding the COVID situation, right? And the reason I choose to kind of go back to that, it's because of how divisive the idea of the vaccination versus people who are strongly against it, right? And it's a conversation that is widely being held across the world. If you look at certain states or what have you, there is this very ongoing debate where people are for and against being vaccinated.
Yeah.
It's just regrettable that, you know, people would lose their respect for the person who is the head of government, who is the person who is leading whatever national effort there is in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. And in Belize, I hope and pray we don't ever get to that point, but the idea of having this ongoing conversation, I think, is something where there is a degree of education that comes out of being able to listen to both sides and the arguments that are being put forward. When you look at the responses from other, in this case, CARICOM heads of state, with regards to what took place, it is widely condemned. I mean, there won't be anyone who would stand behind what took place. But they also agree that there is this ongoing conversation because there are genuinely people who are skeptical and fearful of being vaccinated for all the information or misinformation that is put forward. People are, in some cases, very kind of apprehensive towards that. So I just wanted to start the conversation by reflecting on that.
No, definitely. And last week we saw the government of Belize also issue a press release condemning the act of violence. I think, you know, it's definitely very healthy when people participate in democracy and host protests where they're able to give their point of view on a particular issue. And that's always something to be encouraged and applauded. But when it shifts towards a violent occurrence, that's where there's a definitive line drawn. And whether it was Gonsalves or any other person, it would have been going too far once violence is introduced. So definitely he's recovering. He got a cut on the head, and thankfully it wasn't more severe than what he experienced. But you know, I think that sight of him with the blood on his shirt, that was really, I think, very traumatic when you looked at it. But you're right. The conversation around the vaccination is one that it's so interesting because once again, since the start of the pandemic, we are all united in this. And countries across the world are facing the same level of, or some level of vaccine hesitancy. People have been kind of indulging in all the information that is out there, and there hasn't been as much opportunity to be able to decipher which ones are relevant sources, accurate sources, and I think some of the questions are going unanswered as well. So they're kind of left to, we know what happens when there is a void of information. You fill it in with what suits you best, and Google, for all its helpful purposes, you know, if you Google for something specific, you get the answer you want. If I want to Google where unicorns live right now, I can find that. And something will validate that.
Yeah, the measure is, however, is testing how accurate the information is, right? Because when you have an open source platform, you're able to upload anything you want on there, right? And so the onus is on the individual now to be able to say, you know what, this comes from a medical journal that is you know, accredited or what have, that sort of stuff.
It's, I mean, this conversation goes so far and so deep. I think in the United States, for example, it's become very politically charged.
Yeah.
So that's their challenge there. But they're talking about going after the owners of social media companies for not doing enough to cut down on the misinformation that's being spread through social media. So there are conversations taking place not just on a conversation level or a community level in Belize, but all the way to talking about some of our most popular pastimes, which is spending time on social media and what role they have and what implications their action or inaction have caused. But it is, I think I've said it on the show before, when I look at what's happening in Belize, we definitely can see how there are people who have concerns and questions and skepticism, and some who are completely against the COVID-19 vaccine and vaccinations in general. And it's like a spectrum. But when you look at the vaccination numbers, it really, to me, shows that there's a larger number of people who want to get the vaccine and are getting the vaccine. Or vaccination rates are, well over, the reports that come out are well over 1,000, 2,000 each time we get the report. So people are getting vaccinated. And I suspect at times that the louder voices lead us to believe that there are more people involved than those who are actually interested in getting vaccinated. But we're still not there yet. And there are a lot more people who have to get vaccinated as this variant continues to spread. And as we register more deaths associated with COVID-19, it becomes even more important that we can be able to get as many Belizeans vaccinated as possible.
Well, not to preempt the conversation that we'll be having in the subsequent part of the show, but what we're nearing is the reopening of schools. And so there is this concerted effort between government and the various school managements to get as many teachers vaccinated. And the numbers seems positive at this point in terms of those who have taken the vaccine.
The teachers.
The vaccination, for teachers. I could recall about a month or so ago when there was the launch of the Don't Relax Until You Get Vax campaign. And so in the immediate aftermath of the launch of that particular campaign, I interviewed a teacher who was among the crush of people who descended on the Central Region Health the following day to get vaccinated. And so the perspective that was shared was very interesting. She said, you know what, I love my job. I can't wait to get back into the classroom and administer courses in a one-on-one space, but I must also be responsible for my students, right? And so that for her was the impetus for being vaccinated. Here you have someone who is passionate about what she does as a teacher, as an educator, but is still mindful of, her career as a teacher and the responsibilities that come along with that. And it's not a situation where, she's pro or anti. It's just putting herself in that particular space where she says, okay, this is what I need to do. And I think by and large, teachers are kind of getting that it's beyond what they're doing for themselves.
In our last conversation with Minister Shabat a few weeks ago, I think the rate for teachers was somewhere around 70% of teachers already vaccinated. I'd hope that that's higher by now. But the issue of school, and that's going to be the primary conversation we're going to be having today with the Ministry of Education, I think is one element. And I think when we put the pieces together and talk about vaccination, the importance of having that level of protection so we don't have the type of restrictions that we're seeing right now. That 9 o'clock curfew creeps up like nothing. You see it's 6 o'clock and it's 8 o'clock and you got to start making your way home. We're all tired of it. But this has to be done until we can get a control of the cases because we don't want people losing their loved ones. So, we are frustrated with all the measures and the steps towards getting us where your children can go back to school, where the economy can open up, where you don't have a curfew like a teenager. The way to get there is by being able to have sufficient amount of the population vaccinated.
There's this conversation as well, tied into all of what we're discussing here, where some people are asking, okay, so if I am fully vaccinated, what benefits are there to be had from being fully vaccinated versus persons who are not, or persons who choose not to.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of freedom of movement and their ability to be able to, let's say, enjoy certain activities or what have you, versus those who are seemingly not. That conversation is out there as well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the government is perhaps looking at ways in which you can present an ID card that says you're fully vaccinated and it allows you to be able to engage in certain other activities that the average person who isn't would be able to do.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's part of that general talk.
I think they've said that they're going to look at it quite a few times, but we haven't heard any specific steps that would be allowed. But, you know, Isani, the benefit of where we are is that we tend to have more waves after everyone else. So we have the lessons to learn from everyone else.
Yeah.
And when you pay attention to what's happened in other countries, they did move to that place where, you know, they started to say, well, you can go out, you can remove your masks. And then they entered their wave and things got because the unvaccinated people keep on spreading and keep on filling up the hospitals. What your vaccination does is protect you from severe COVID-19, so you're less likely to be hospitalized and most likely to not die from the disease. And that's the added layer of protection that you can get with the vaccination. But yeah, this conversation is ongoing. And we should let you know that, of course, tonight we continue with our series that we have been hosting in collaboration with the Ministry of Health. We wanted to help them get some information out for all our viewers. And so it's about getting the facts. And we get some professionals on set who helps us to understand all things COVID and all things about the vaccine. So that continues tonight at 7:30. It is an interactive session, so you can log on Facebook and you can send questions or topics that you would like to have or professionals address. You can also send a video with your questions if that's how you feel you want to communicate. But it starts at 7:30, and you can tune in and participate.
All right, perfect. So that wraps up our brief
Well, I
conversation.
did have one more thing on that note.
Okay,
the
sure.
Pfizer vaccine should be coming, and I think that's really interesting. I know that, again, in conversation with the Minister of Health, he spoke of the possibility of that they're exploring providing the Pfizer vaccines to children. Of course, we know it's been tested and is being administered to teenagers in the United States. And so it's going to be interesting to see what we decide to do with those vaccinations when they arrive.
That's something that we're going to be looking forward to see how parents treat with the idea of having their kids vaccinated, particularly, again, in the context of those who are for or against vaccinations, right? So that's what we can look forward to. This discussion was a singular one, but it kind of puts into perspective a lot of what is happening within the region and in the country as well. And as Marlene mentioned earlier, there's going to be a show at 7:30 tonight. If you want to engage in that particular conversation, you can more than anything else. Feel free to join in on that discussion later on. So that does it for us on the Eye on the News this morning. Details of some of what was discussed earlier in the show can be found in our newscast at 6 o'clock, streaming on Facebook and on YouTube.
And it's time for us to get moving into our show for today, and we are starting off with a conversation.
We have a two-part conversation this morning with our friends from the Ministry of Education. We'll have with us on set Minister of Education Francis Fonseca and, of course, his Chief Executive Officer Diane Mejia as they discuss plans for the return to face-to-face instructions. That's the first part.
And the second part of our show, we're going to be getting an update from the Disability Desk Coordinator, Marshall Nunez. Of course, we know he is working to advocate for persons with disabilities in this country to ensure that they are included within all things that take place in our national development. So he's going to tell us how that process has been going and some of the things you can expect in the pipeline. So that's what we have in store for today. We're going to go ahead and take our first break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to representatives of the Ministry of Education. So please, stay tuned.
It's a fact that with Smart, you get truly unlimited everything. Only with Smart, you get unlimited data anytime, while with the other guy, it's only double data on weekends. With unlimited data every day with Smart, there's no need to wait. So, it's a fact that our unlimited plans beat the competition. Stop being measured and told when to use your data and get unlimited talk, text, and data. Experience the true unlimited plans with Smart. That's a fact. Make the switch and live smart.
Imagine going through your entire day without the burden and risk of carrying cash on you. Belize's shift to digital wallets has begun with eCash. We can now skip the cash when collecting money or paying for our essentials, all while using a fast, easy, and secure platform. Simply add funds to your wallet via bank transfer or at an agent, and you're good to go. You will be able to make quick, easy payments simply by scanning QR codes. And best of all, it all happens just like that. Payments are as easy as clicking a link online or scanning a QR code. Download the eCash app from the Google Play and Apple App Store today and take your first step into a cashless lifestyle. The future is here with eCash. For more information, visit www.e-cash.com or contact us via WhatsApp at 613-0257 to find out more.
Introducing Edam A cheese, the A+ Dutch cheese to hit the Belizean market. As the name says, it is of A-class quality, the best Dutch cheese in Belize. Edam A cheese is creamier, less salty, and simply more delicious. Don't be left out. Get your A cheese at a supermarket near you. A cheese, exclusively distributed by Unitex Company Limited. Call us at 610-3626 or 610-8910. Follow us on Facebook at Unitex Belize.
The vaccine is now available. We here at R&G Life encourage you to take the vaccine. Belize, it's time to roll up our sleeves.
I'm rolling up mine because I know what COVID can do to families.
Because I want to go back to the way things were.
I'm rolling up mine so that I'm able to do music again.
Because I want to protect my family.
Things are slowly getting back to normal. The new normal, which includes getting vaccinated. Trust the facts. When your turn comes, take the opportunity to get vaccinated. Roll up or believe.
How does the AstraZeneca vaccine work? The vaccine provides support to help your body develop immunity to the virus that causes COVID-19. The body is left with a supply of memory cells that will remember how to fight the virus. It takes a few weeks for the body to produce the antibodies after vaccination. How long does it take to build immunity after taking the first dose of the vaccine? There is protection 14 days after a person's first dose. However, that initial protection may decline over time, which is the reason why it is so important to get the second shot. How long after the first dose should one take the second dose? The second dose should be given between week 8 and week 12. Are there any deaths associated with the AstraZeneca vaccine? There have been no deaths associated with the AstraZeneca vaccine. Vaccines save lives. They remain the safest, most effective, and cost-effective medical tool developed. Increased uptake of the vaccine is the best way to stop this pandemic, save lives, and return to normalcy.
The Social Security Board, in collaboration with the Labor Department, takes this opportunity to remind insured persons of the requirements for compensation when on sick leave. Any employee who has worked with an employer for at least 2 months is entitled to 16 working days of sick leave with full pay every year. This is how it works. Upon approval of a sickness or injury benefit claim by SSD, 80% of the employee's weekly insurable earnings is paid as a Social Security benefit, and the difference in the employee's salary is paid by the employer. This is to ensure that the employee does not suffer any loss of wages when ill. After 16 days, compensation for sick leave is paid as a Social Security benefit only. Some conditions apply. This message is brought to you by the Social Security Board and the Labor Department. Social Security Board, safeguarding you, your family, your future.
Today's COVID update is brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price but stay for the service.
And welcome back. As we mentioned earlier, we're embarking upon a two-segment conversation this morning. We have with us in person the Minister of Education and Culture, the Honorable Francis Fonseca. He's joined by Chief Executive Officer Diane Mejia. Good morning, folks.
Good morning. Good morning.
The primary conversation we're going to have today surrounds the reopening of schools later this month, August 23rd and the 29th, is it? 30th, sorry. But there's this concern among parents as to where we are in terms of the numbers of active cases, in terms of the numbers of teachers who have been vaccinated, and the overall situation where it concerns them sending their kids back to school. Let's begin our conversation, first of all, by discussing the effort being put forward by the Ministry of Education to get as many teachers vaccinated. Perhaps if we start there, then we could begin fleshing out the conversation. So let's get your take on that, Minister.
Yeah, well, first of all, we share those concerns. We have always maintained at the Ministry of Education that the health and safety of all of our education stakeholders is our #1 priority. That means our teachers, our administrators, and of course our students and their families. So that remains our primary concern. In terms of the vaccination campaign that has been taking place, I think we're moving in the right direction. The latest report we got from the Ministry of Health is that 72.6% of our teachers have been vaccinated. And so that's moving, absolutely moving in the right direction. That's very good news because, as you all know, in the early days, we were very, very concerned about the very slow vaccination rate for our teachers. So that has moved up considerably over the past few months. And that's because of a very aggressive and deliberate effort between ourselves, the Ministry of Health, and also the Belize National Teachers Union, who have joined us in this effort. We've always said we hope to be well over 80% by the time school reopens at the end of August. We believe that we will certainly meet that target, but obviously we're not satisfied with that. We want all of our teachers to be vaccinated because, when our teachers are vaccinated, everyone is safer. They are safer as individuals. Their fellow teachers who they work with are safer. The administration is safer. And of course, our students are safer. And their families and all of their families, because that is fundamentally, the concern. We, have been doing well, but as you know, of late, there has been a surge. We're very, very concerned about that. And the Ministry of Health and Wellness has been working very, very aggressively to maintain, wherever these hotspots arise, to try to control and mitigate the spread of the virus. But that's going to be, as you all well know, that's going to be an ongoing challenge. There's no perfect solution to that. But we feel good about where we are, but obviously there's a lot of work to be done.
Is it a definitive stance at this time that you will reopen the school doors at the end of August?
Right now, yes.
Okay.
That's the goal. We've been working toward reopening for face-to-face instruction as long as we can continue to observe the COVID protocols and procedures. What we see, what we've learned, our phased-in reopening, our phased-in return that we did between April and June showed us that with the correct procedures in place and with the schools understanding and observing these procedures, there's actually very little transmission of student to teacher and teacher to student. The protocols really can be observed. And that's where we're going again. We feel that, as Minister said, absolutely, the health and safety of all the stakeholders is a priority. But we cannot lose sight of the fact that there has been such significant learning loss. We cannot lose sight, we all know this, of the really, in some cases, debilitating effects of not being in the classroom for a year and a half for some students. And so what we're working toward is to be able to return safely as long as the protocols and the procedures are observed. Now what this means is that school will look different for everyone, because some schools physically have the space to set up their classrooms with the required 3-foot spacing, and they may be able to have an entire class in at the same time. So they may go back to something that is closer to pre-pandemic school life. You know, in some cases where schools have smaller physical classrooms and larger student classroom sizes, they may need to open with restrictions, with shifted schedules, staggered days, that sort of thing. But really, that's where we are right now, that we want to be able to return face-to-face with the strict observance of the protocols and procedures.
Perhaps from a logistical standpoint, what has been the biggest challenge so far in terms of trying to get things off the ground?
You want it in alphabetical order?
However you want to present it.
The biggest logistical challenge? I think overall, one of the greatest challenges is that every school has a different culture and a different reality. And so it's a very different world, and it's hard to say, this is the way that you should do it, because we've said this so many times, this is not a one-size-fits-all sort of situation, you know, and so we fully appreciate, you know, everyone saying, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And the reality is that we can't predict, you know, what's going to happen in a world where, you know, COVID makes everything so fluid, and we have to be flexible in so many ways. So it's hard to give a definitive rule, and it's hard to say on this day this will happen, because really we don't know exactly what will happen. So we just need to be prepared, and we need to work with everyone concerned and appreciate how hard it is to not be able to plan properly. But you know, we have to shift to a place where we need to have multiple plans. And it's really nobody's fault. It's just the way that it is.
You know, by recollection, this is attempt number 3 of going back to face-to-face classes. Last start of the school year, earlier this year, and now this would be our 3rd attempt. Let's hope 3rd time's a charm, right? But there are lessons to be learned from what's happened before. We know in the reopening to face-to-face class earlier this year, there were schools that did identify COVID and a spread within classrooms. What lessons have we learned from that, and how do we mitigate them moving forward?
Okay, so actually we started the return in April, and it wasn't until the end of May that we actually had the first instance. The lesson learned was something that we did right away. Was we instituted procedures for schools to notify all the relevant authorities immediately whenever there was any suspected COVID case. So no school would have to work in isolation to figure out, now what do I do? right? And they would be able to let the Ministry of Education know, as well as the Ministry of Health and Wellness know right away at the same time, so that the response could be direct, it could be immediate, and whatever testing, contact tracing needed to be done, cleaning, sanitizing, it was done right away. I think really looking back that our phased-in return was a good experience. It really gave schools the opportunity to put in practice what they before only had on paper, and we learned that this is why I can tell you it can work. You know, the challenges came in toward the end of the academic year when we saw numbers rising, and the Ministry of Health advised us to, you know, in the interest of caution, that we should close the school year off a little early, and so that's why we did so a week early. But we really feel that we were able to learn some good lessons there. Putting that procedure in place was very good. And I think that's something that we will definitely build on moving forward.
And Minister, from your perspective, clearly there is a lot of collaboration that takes place with all individual ministries with the Ministry of Health. There are some who are questioning why the Ministry of Education or the Ministry of Health would give the go-ahead for children to return to a group setting in the midst of what is now established as a third wave.
Yeah, again, you know, we understand, we respect, we appreciate all of the concerns that people have. We share those concerns. And as I keep saying, we will not do anything at the Ministry of Education that puts at risk our students or teachers or administrators. We will follow the science, we will follow the advice of our experts. We are not public health experts. We will follow their advice. That is what we have always done. We will continue to do so. But we have a special responsibility as the leaders of the Ministry of Education to ensure that our children do not, as the CEO so rightly said, lose any more classroom time. We have seen the data. We have seen the evidence. And it's, you know, there is global data that supports this very, 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 you know, troubling experience that is taking place. We cannot afford to have our students lose another year of face-to-face instruction. So we have a responsibility to come up with a plan, as we have, to ensure that we deliver face-to-face instruction for our students. If the public health officials say to us, between now and the reopening of school, the dates, 23rd of August, the 30th of August, that is not possible, then we will follow their advice. But we cannot afford to lose any more time. I've made this point so many times. The persons who are falling most behind are our poorest students, or students living in rural communities, or most vulnerable students. And you know, we can't sit idly by and allow that to happen. We have to have a plan for those students. We're very committed to doing that. So, you know, all of us have to live with COVID. We have to find a way of living with COVID, as you know. So there's a national sort of plan for us to carry on our lives living with COVID. We have to do the same thing at the education level, at the school level. And it's very challenging. It's not easy. I thought the experience we had, as the CEO said, in April, between April and June, I thought was an excellent experience. I thought we learned many very valuable lessons from that experience. And even though we had to shut down schools 1 week, it was only 1 week early. I thought, as we had said from the very beginning of that sort of experiment, that's what it was, an opportunity. We encouraged schools to sign up because we thought it was important for them to have a trial run leading into the new school year. So we think we've learned a lot of valuable lessons from that experience. We think we have a plan in place. We follow the protocols. We get vaccinated. That's why, again, it comes back to getting vaccinated. It's so important for teachers to get vaccinated. You know, and hopefully, at some point, I heard you talking about it earlier, even our students or teenage students will have the opportunity, if they so choose, to get vaccinated as well.
I have a two-part question. What becomes of the Belize Junior Achievement Test and the PSE in the context of the pandemic situation? Because if I'm not mistaken, we went through the previous academic year, the one that ended recently, without students taking BJAT or PSE. And some of those students are, in fact, moving on to high school. In the context of all that is happening, are we still looking to have this as a staple in the education system for students to pass on?
No, I think certainly our thinking and of course, you know, it has to be a discussion we have with all of our stakeholders. But certainly I can tell you our position at the Ministry of Education is that while we need ongoing assessment of our students, that is always critically important for evaluating, you know, how your education system is working, how your students are performing. That's critically important. But certainly we are of the view that examinations like BJAT and PSE have really, you know, passed their time. And we need to develop new and creative models of properly assessing our students. So that's what we're looking at. We've gone, I think, 2 years without the PSE. So I think that tells you a lot. So we're looking at that, and we're having a discussion about that internally, which we will have with our other stakeholders. But that's certainly my view as the Minister of Education.
Is the plan to not have these exams this school year?
No, we won't have those exams this school year. And as the Minister of Education, my hope is that we don't have those exams in the future. I think we should get rid of those examinations, certainly the PSE, and as I said, develop more creative, more modern models of assessment.
We need to look at different ways to assess, and we need to look at diagnosis and assessment as consistent tools that can be used at every level. We don't need to only focus on 2 isolated years, you know, so there's much that is worthwhile about diagnosis and assessment. And I think, as Minister said, there are many other ways that we can do this. We can, and we need to. Moving forward, looking at how we will aid the schools with learning recovery, we need to use diagnosis and assessment at every level consistently so that we can determine where students are, so we can meet them where they are and then bring them forward.
What about CXCs? The end of the last school year, there was the allowance for people to take their CXCs. In fact, this is the examinations that the government pays for. Has there been a decision for that so far? Clearly, the money can be better invested.
Yeah, except as you know, the CXC is a part of a regional framework and a part of a regional commitment that we make. So that's a little more complex. That requires a lot more discussion. But again, there's a healthy debate taking place that I like about, you know, the importance of these and the relevance of these examinations. So I think again there is room for change. One of the areas, exciting areas that certainly that I am very excited about is curriculum reform, and we'll be making some very big announcements about curriculum reform very shortly. But that ties into this whole area of, you know, how do we deliver education and the relevance of education and how do we assess education. But I can say to you that our curriculum reform exercise that we have been engaged in has brought us to a point where we have removed over some 1,000 learning outcomes from the curriculum. So a more focused, targeted, relevant curriculum is critically important. The curriculum overload is a term you've heard over and over and over for years, and we've not taken the bull by the horns and addressed it. We have done so over the past few months in a very consultative way, and I think that will have long-lasting positive effects on the delivery of education moving forward. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that.
And with the removal of these standardized tests, it also opens up more time for people to focus on the curriculum. Because we do know that schools shifted to kind of just heavy preparation for BJAT or PSE.
Right.
So August 23rd comes around, and we notice that there's an increase in the number of active cases. It prompts the ministry to fall back on Plan B. What is Plan B in the event that, you know, we're not allowed to go back to school on those scheduled dates?
Well, Plan B is what we had in place. We have Plan B already. We will then have to fall back on what we had in place in April. So, we are absolutely committed to returning to face-to-face instruction. That is our hope. That is certainly my sincere prayer. I really hope we can do that because of the consequences of not having face-to-face instructions. But if we can't, the public health officials say to us in a clear and definitive way, we cannot do so, then we will revert to the plan we had in place for earlier this year.
That brings me to this. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add there, kind of in part for what you asked Isani, and then earlier, Marlene, when you mentioned what lessons we learned, one of the spin-offs of the lessons that we learned was just the very, very clear recognition that we need to approach teacher training in a different way. Because this generation of students is so different, and the pandemic has made them only more technological and only more different from those of us who are, adults, right? So we have to recognize those differences, and it means that we have to even approach the way that we teach the teachers differently, because our teachers are the adults who come from the paper-based generation, who are used to doing things a certain way, and now they're dealing with students who are more comfortable with a digital device than they are with pen and paper. And the past year and a half have done nothing to change that. It's only made it more obvious. So one of the things that we did was we created, in accordance with one of the commitments of Plan Belize, which was to start the Teacher Learning Institute, we set up the Teacher Learning Institute as a virtual platform. So it's a hub for all teacher education and teacher development opportunities. And we launched that hub last Sunday at the beginning of August, because traditionally this is the time workshop when teachers are doing, this is workshop time, right? and traditionally, teachers would be, 30 to a room at this location and that location. Well, what we have done is really, really opened up that field. Since launching that hub, we have close to 3,000 teachers who are already active users on the system. They've signed up for 42, or there's a choice of 42 courses right now. So really, it doesn't matter where you are in the country, you can access this. And the choices of workshop now are so open. So, you can choose something that's on curriculum, you can choose something about transitioning back to the classroom, you can choose to learn about, how to choreograph Garifuna music and dance. There's a huge variety that's open to the teachers. And part of that is for the teachers learning how to use educational apps, learning how to bridge that digital divide that we're facing. And so we're really hopeful, and we see already that this can be a way. This is, again, you know, learning the lessons,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
This is moving forward, one of the ways for us to meet the needs of the teachers and also meet the needs of the students.
Have you also included teaching teachers how to teach digitally?
Yes.
Because that was one of the gaps I think that a lot of people
Absolutely.
didn't acknowledge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, because it's more than turning on a computer and reading from a book. You know, that's not what you want. So one of the goals that we really pray that it's going to be something that's going to make a marked difference to the students, because we know that hybrid learning is a real thing and it's going to have to continue to be a thing, that the teachers will become more comfortable using technology as a tool, really, not just as a medium, but as a tool to delivering better lessons.
Let's take a moment here, though, because it is important for us to know what your data is saying so far. You said you've been investigating what you call the learning loss. And if we know what the challenges are as of today, we know what the plans are, what needs to be addressed moving forward. What concerns you the most from what you're seeing?
There are many, many concerns.
Yeah.
But as I said earlier, I'm concerned about students who are leaving school, who
So we've
have
had dropouts?
dropped out of the
How
education
much?
system.
I'm not going to remember an exact
Okay.
number. I'm sorry. I don't want to say
Yeah.
something that's wrong. But
And it's all ages?
Mainly high school, mainly boys. So that's a very, very real concern.
Yeah, and again, that's, you know, a factor of culture, a factor of the economy, where we have young people who live in rural communities. They may not have access to digital devices, so they are totally disengaged from education for the last year and a half, so they begin helping their family on the farm or helping in some other respect. We get a little job to supplement the family income. Maybe, again, a family member has lost their job in tourism or something, so the kids now supplement that income by selling. And that's the challenge. Will those children return to the classroom? And we have to find ways of ensuring that they do return to the classroom. So that really is my greatest concern, that those students who have dropped out of the school system, finding ways for them to return, but also you know, those who have been engaged at home but have not been getting the kind of support they need. So they've been logging on, but they've been half in, half out, and not really fully understanding and appreciating the lessons that have been taught to them. So it's all about those students and what they have lost personally, that you know, drives us.
From a social point of view, isn't it more concerning perhaps when you have students who are dropping out from the high school level in Belize City, where, as you mentioned earlier, perhaps in the rural areas, you have kids who drop out and are able to assist around the home with farming and other stuff. But in Belize City, I would presume that it's difficult that once you have a teenager who drops out of school, getting that person back into school is a challenge, considering the fact that we all know how gang activity is in Belize City. We all know all of these other influences that come to play when that person is not engaged in any kind of healthy and active learning. Doesn't it make it all the more challenging for you guys to be able to try to get these individuals back?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the CEO will agree with me that one of the most shocking and alarming things that we found when we came to the Ministry of Education was the state of education on the south side of Belize City. It's absolutely in crisis, absolute crisis. I mean, schools like Gwen Lizarraga High School, which was on the rise, the enrollment had fallen from over 500 students to now It's bordering around 200 students at Gwen Lizarraga High School. That was a school on the rise. Sadie Vernon High School, has around 100 students. Excelsior High School has 40 students. 40 students. Maud Williams High School, facing similar challenges. So we have made this a priority. We have put together a pilot project to tackle the challenges facing our students on the south side of Belize City, particularly at those 4 government high schools.
Yeah.
How do you test the economic viability of that, though? Because when you look, I would want to think that perhaps there's a teacher-to-student ratio that needs to be met in order for government to say, you know what, this is worth funding in terms of their monthly salaries, etc. And when you have below average teacher-to-student ratio, then it raises a lot of questions and concerns. How do you test economic viability based on that?
Yeah, well, we know that, as a fact, we know that there are students who should be in high school. So the numbers are there. And so there has been a failure. There has been a failure of developing a proper plan to get those students into seats in those schools. And that requires taking a comprehensive look at what those schools should be doing. So you're absolutely right. But what we want to do is to ensure that these schools are complementing each other, not competing with each other. So one particular school may have to take a more vocational, technical approach to education. Another school might be looking at arts and other areas, or IT, science, technology. That's the kind of planning we need, and that's the kind of focus we need. So we are developing that. We're preparing a pilot project to start this year with a number of schools across the country, but including those schools on the south side of Belize City. It's a crisis. It's a crisis. It's just like the COVID crisis we're facing. We're facing a crisis in education, and we have to respond with the same sense of urgency and the same sense of purpose if we're going to make a difference.
I'm sure you also have to do some rebranding too, that, that quality education is available in these institutions.
That's such an important part of our discussions internally right now, is rebranding for these schools, for example, and really for all our government schools. We want to be able to focus positive energy and help our government schools to make a stronger impact across the country.
And there's some great success stories of students who've come out of these very same institutions.
Exactly.
So that's a really critical point. Let me just allow us to go back for a moment, though, on the issue of learning loss and the disparities that exist. And that's one of the main questions I have. When we look at urban centers and we look at private schools and areas where people perhaps had better resources to access technology and internet, had better resources to get assistance with educating their children in the past year and a half, it is very different when you go beyond the urban center, and especially when you go into rural areas. So let's imagine for a second that the 2018 statistics say one in every Belizean is living below the poverty line. We know the poverty exists. We knew there was a disparity before, and this will only be heightened after COVID-19 when it comes to education. How are you going to have concentrated efforts to ensure that those who are further behind can catch up and not allow another group to be able to excel beyond?
This is really where we need to depend on all the partners in this. This is why we need to focus energy on the teachers, so that we help the teachers to be able to help the students. This is why we want to be able to make sure that even if it is in some limited capacity, that students can return to face-to-face instruction, because we know that if the support is not available at home, at least we can have support available for them at school. We know that this is what teachers do. Teachers meet you where you are and help you to move forward. And in some cases, this is really one of the best ways. You know, you can't control everything. Right now, there's so little we can control.
Yeah.
But what we can do is focus our energies in those areas. So in trying to make sure that teachers will have opportunities for relevant professional education and development, we think that's one thing that we can do. We can try to make sure that we support the schools in their preparation. Our district education center teams spent countless hours, you know, from March all the way through to June, and you know, are starting up again now, making sure that they were on the ground working with the schools, checking, making sure everything was in place. And the teams will now be joined by Ministry of Health and Wellness professionals, so that when they visit the schools, this is going to be their focus really, is monitoring and support of the schools, right? So that when they visit schools, there's going to be someone there who can look and evaluate, and the role is not to challenge, but to support, to say, okay, you know what, if you do this way, maybe this will be more effective. And so we make sure that we help in the ways that we really think we can help, because we know what you said is true. There are some students who really have suffered more. Every child has lost. Every child. Every single student, no matter the level, has lost socially, personally, and academically. So our role as the ministry really can only be to try to make sure that we put things in place and we help wherever we can, so that they can come back, and when they come back, that they will have what they need so that they can.
I'm glad you
How do you
raised that.
balance this though? Because let's look at, and we don't have to mince words. We know that if half the population was poor in 2018, it's worse now. We know that. We know people are lost their jobs. We know that tourism is slowly rebounding, not fast enough to catch up with what's owed. And now, you know, parents have to register children to school. They have to give them the tools that they need to go back. And many parents find themselves in a situation where they can't find it. On the other end, the schools need this money to be able to manage the school, like keep the fans on, get this. I don't know if they're providing sanitizer or what the plan is there, but they need the income in the same level. How are you helping both the educational institutions mitigate these factors?
Well, I mean, first of all, as you know and appreciate, Belize, we've always been a country that's deeply committed to education, and that's reflected in our resource allocation to education. You know, we're approaching, you know, certainly $300 million in the budget allocated to education. So that commitment is firm. The people of this country, the government is committed to providing those resources. As you rightly point out, you know, that's true of every facet of life. People are having difficulty paying their bills. They're having difficulty in every respect. And so you're right, schools are faced with that challenge. And again, all of us have to be creative. We have to develop new ways of trying to keep the lights on, keep things going. So that's an ongoing discussion we have with our managing authorities, and we will continue to try to provide as much support as we can. Every day we reach out to our global partners or regional partners to try to find more resources that we can then pass on to our school communities, whether it's, you know, digital devices, whether it's internet access, whether it's sanitize, whatever these equipment supplies the schools need. We have done a lot of work, or partners have done a lot of work to support schools all across the country. But the discussion we've had with our managing authorities, and certainly with the Council of Churches, our partners in the running of schools, is that we will not turn away students because they are not able to pay their bills, their school fees. The schools are all committed, all of them. All managing authorities are committed to working with parents, to working with families, to find a way to ensure that students remain in school. So, you know, it will be challenging,
Yeah.
but as all of them have said, listen, as long as parents demonstrate that they are, you know, equally committed to the education of their children, the schools will work with them. We will work with them at the Ministry of Education. I can tell you we have given a lot of support to students over the past 6 months, tremendous support to families to try to assist them with our limited resources. You know, so we're committed to doing that. We've established, for example, one of the things we've established in the budget this year is the Rural Education Grant Fund. Our commitment was a $5 million grant fund. Obviously, in the current circumstances, economic circumstances, we can't start with $5 million. We started with $1 million in the budget for Rural Education Grant Fund. And we're using those monies to support rural families to get, for that specific purpose, getting those students back into school, helping those families to meet the cost of education. And we'll continue to do that. We'll continue. It's a discussion we have every week in Cabinet. How can we provide more support to our families to ensure that our children get a quality education?
Okay. Well, what we're going to do right now is take a very quick break. We have our viewers who've been sending in questions. They have some questions they want to know about school reopening. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll be answering some of those live in the next segment. So please, stay tuned.
Working off-site doesn't mean you have to be off your game. Studies have shown that simply adding a keyboard and mouse to your laptop increases productivity by 26%. Add a monitor and you'll be 35% more productive. At Fulltech Systems, we have what you need to enhance your remote work or e-learning experience. With devices such as headsets, video conferencing monitors, webcams, keyboards, mice, docking stations, all with the brands you trust. Keep connected with collaboration tools like Microsoft 365 Suite and Kaspersky and perform efficiently no matter where you are. Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
The vaccine is now available. We here at R&G Life encourage you to take the vaccine. Belize, it's time to roll up our sleeves.
I'm rolling up mine because I know what COVID can do to families.
Because I want to go back to the way things were.
I'm rolling up mine so that I'm able to do music again.
Because I want to protect my family.
Things are slowly getting back to normal. The new normal, which includes getting vaccinated. Trust the facts. When your turn comes, take the opportunity to get vaccinated. Roll up or believe.
Hey son, how was your first day at Sixth Form?
Really cool. It was great to see my friends, and I really love my teachers.
I'm so happy to hear that. I'm sorry I wasn't there for your first day, but I'll be back from Corozal next week.
It's okay, Dad. I can't wait to see you. And please remember, I still have some books I need to purchase.
Ah, yes. Let me e-cash you that right now. Money has been sent and add a little extra cash just for you.
Whoa, Dad. Thanks. Got it.
You're welcome, sir.
Download the eCash app today and take your first step into a cashless lifestyle. For more information, visit www.e-cash.com or contact us via WhatsApp at 613-0257. eCash, the future is here.
And welcome back. As Marlene mentioned before our commercial break, we have some questions from our audience that we're going to be fielding to the minister and his CEO. Marlene, do you have?
All right, so the first question is whether or not children will need to wear uniform when they return to school.
No.
Okay. And will the school be sanitized immediately after hearing there's a confirmed case?
Well, there's a well-established protocol and procedure in place whenever there's a confirmed case that involves the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health. But absolutely, fully sanitizing that school is an important part of that process.
Okay. And this one says, the majority of the preparations cater towards primary and secondary institutions. What is the plan for preschool? Is it the intent to bring back on stream the preschool unit as a sole unit to be able to manage the early years?
Yeah, of course. We have a preschool unit. And again, preschool is a full part of our plan. We're absolutely committed to ensuring that our preschoolers return to school. And that is an absolute priority for us at the Ministry of Education.
And the protocols for the babies, they're similar?
Yes,
they're manageable?
Yes,
especially at that age.
They're manageable, and we've seen that they can work. So absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I think the little ones actually love their masks. They get used to it very easy. Why are we paying for registration this school year when students were not in school for a year and a half?
I believe registration fees relate to the year that's starting and not the year that's gone. So we're starting a new year.
Okay. And of course, you were speaking of this earlier. Students, how will the ministry provide for students who might be technologically inclined but don't have digital devices?
Yeah, that's an ongoing challenge. As you know, the government has invested significantly in these digital devices. As you know, we came into office and there was a project in place already for the delivery of 14,000 tablets. I think based on the survey coming out of that, there was a gap of about 900 or so students that did not have access. We've tried to address that and fill that gap. But it's an ongoing challenge. I mean, we get requests every day at the Ministry of Education for digital devices. And we try to work with our school communities. We try to work with our partners to access devices. That's an ongoing challenge. And of course, as you will appreciate, the 14,000 tablets, a lot of them have been destroyed and they were broken. There was a return policy. So even those who got tablets last year, many of them need new ones this year. So it's an ongoing challenge. At the same time, we're working with the Digicel, with Smart, to provide greater access. I think there's a exciting project where we're providing SIM cards to about 3,000 students. So that provides them with, I think, 10,000 megs of data.
And they'll have Microsoft 365 access, and it will be for the 10 months of the school year. So we're trying our best. It's really ongoing to meet the needs, and fill those gaps, right?
Yeah, there was that return policy. I mean, how many did they actually return? The parents actually returned? Do we know?
No,
ongoing.
It's asset management really
Yeah.
now at this
Yeah.
point. And
I
then
mean,
some
we
of
as
them,
adults break our phones. Let's be kind to children, right?
yeah, and then some of them really, you know, in being returned, they're given now to, you know, those in a new year, and it's really an ongoing process. That's
what happens if a school doesn't meet their population? What will be done? I'm guessing number of students coming back.
Well, I think one of the things that we would have to do is try to figure out what's happening there. You know, when Minister spoke of the schools in the South Side, one of the things we need to do is to try to build enrollment in those areas, right? So it would be difficult to just blanket answer without knowing the context there.
Will schools be given the option in the best interest of students, parents, faculty, and staff? As schools, we don't have the manpower on the campus to ensure proper social distancing. Will it be optional for schools to return back to face-to-face?
No, I mean,
no.
Face-to-face instruction, there are very clear protocols and procedures that you have to follow. And those are fixed. So if for a school to get green lighted by the Ministry of Education to return to face-to-face instruction, they must meet those standards because those are the requirements of the Ministry of Health.
Now, a lot of parents do clamor. I want to just piggyback off this question. A lot of parents do clamor for the children to go back, and sometimes the school makes the decision that they are not prepared to do so. Do you get involved in a situation like that, or you leave the school to make the decision?
Well, what we try to do in some of these cases that come to us is we try to figure out what is it that the school feels it's not prepared to do. You know, what exactly is the problem? Is it is it a challenge with spacing in the classroom? Is there a way that we can support? This is really what a lot of our teams on the ground worked on in between April and May. Well, between March and May, really, when schools were reopening. So we try to work with the schools wherever we can there.
Okay. And Minister, you maybe can discuss this one. How will the reduced working hours look for teachers? This was agreed to as a part of the salary cuts.
Yeah, it's a very difficult decision that had to be made because the last thing we need is less time, less teaching time. But it was a part of our commitments made as a result of the consultations we held with the unions. During those consultations, we agreed that the BNTU and the Ministry of Education would have a sort of bilateral discussion on this matter. We have had that discussion. We presented various options to the teachers' union. They carried out a survey, and their preferred option is that we have a 4-day Monday to Thursday, 4-day work week teaching, and then the 5th day would be they have assignments, really, assignments for students. You know, I refer to it as a sort of guided instruction, but maybe you could elaborate more, CEO. But that's the option that was chosen by the teachers, the Belize National Teachers Union, and so we will respect that decision. So it will be 4 days of teaching and 1 day of assignments where students are given assignments. Right.
Okay, so you're looking at a 4-day school week going back.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Interesting. So let's pick I think we do have some more questions. We'll come back to them if we have some time, but some of them you've already addressed about assistance for parents, about who sanitizes the classroom. And since we are on the issue of teachers and the salary cuts, you have always been aware of the fact that teachers do invest quite a bit into their classrooms and into the upkeep. What's going to happen now that perhaps they won't have the extra income to be able to do so?
Well, again, you know, and I say this again, the decision, the salary cut decision is, I always have to say this for the record, was a very difficult and painful decision. but one which the government felt that it was obliged to make given the economic circumstances we found upon taking office. You know, like everyone else, we have to be creative. There are very few people have extra money, and regardless of what profession you're in. So we don't expect our teachers to be taking money out of their pockets. Some, I can tell you, I've visited, with schools when we reopened back in April, between April and June, and many teachers had been very creative with the help of parents, and they had worked with parents. Parents came in, gave a helping hand to paint the classroom. They got their students involved in the preparation of different visual aids and that sort of thing. So we expect that the same thing will continue. Just like all of us have had to adapt and adjust, our teachers are among the most creative, responsible people we have in our society. They will find ways to adjust and adapt. And we will continue to do, as I've said, to find ways of providing support to them. We're always reaching out to our partners, whether it's UNICEF, any of our partners. We're reaching out to them to provide that type of support. And where we can do it from the Ministry of Education, we try to do it directly through our own projects that we have ongoing at the Ministry. So it's an ongoing challenge, but we believe it's one that we can meet working together.
Now, especially when it comes to the issues of things like sanitizer, and they need them to be able to reopen, these costs are to be incurred by whom?
Well, I think this needs to be something that we share realistically, but the ministry is actively sourcing materials that will be distributed among schools, so that we can have sanitizer, so that we can have soap, disinfectant, that we can support them in their cleaning needs. I don't know that we'll be able to give everybody everything that they need for every day, but we fully understand that disinfecting and sanitizing are now daily needs. And so the cost there, we don't need to have lots of different things, but we need to have basic things. And so we're working on sourcing things so that we'll be able to distribute to schools.
If there is a case that is diagnosed in a classroom setting, who takes on the cost of the deep cleaning that's associated with sanitizing that space?
Well, what we've learned is that we have established procedures in place, all right? And the sanitizing happens on a regular basis. And different schools have, they have their ways of approaching, the sanitizing needs. So it's not necessarily something that you always need to have a professional company come in and do it. They're different.
I think you noted before the parents' involvement, and while not all parents are in the same position, some can help more. Very often we're talking about what Ministry of Education can do, what teachers and managing authorities need to do. What do you hope your parents will do moving forward?
Yeah, I think, parents, I don't think we emphasize it enough, but the role of parents in education is critically important. And all of us who have had, parental support in our own lives, we can see the difference. We can see the difference in young people, and teachers will tell you that they can see a significant difference in students who are getting support from their families, as opposed to those who are not getting that same level of support. So it's critically important. So parents, we are calling on our parents to, we know these are challenging times. We know everybody is stressed out. As I said earlier, people are having difficulty meeting their bills, putting food on the table. Very, very challenging times. Many parents have lost their jobs. So we understand all of that. Again, our message is, in the context of all of that, let us not forget how important education is, how much of a priority education is. You know, so all of us have to make sacrifices. Let's ensure that, you know, as much as we can, we don't sacrifice the education of our children.
Yeah. You know, I need to highlight the fact that parents are so critical in all of this, right? And some of the parents who are the most impacted, or who have been most impacted by the pandemic and the school closures, are the parents of the students who have special learning needs. And we have seen how these parents can band together and they work to support one another. You know, when we have the inspiration present in these parents, when we see what they do. This weekend, there were some 30 people who participated for the first time in a paraprofessional course that was organized and delivered by Autism Belize. And there were parents there were teachers, and there were young people who are ready to be trained as paraprofessionals. This past Saturday was the first day of that course. These are inspirations because they show us that the support that we give comes in so many different forms. You know, as a parent, your support can be, as the minister said, helping with painting a classroom, or it can be a donation of soap that you have, or it can be learning what can you do to help your child in school. You know, there are many things that you can do as a parent to support what happens in a school setting, and they don't all have to cost money. Sometimes the most important things that you can do as a parent don't cost money. So really my encouragement is for us to just really be collaborative. You know, let's talk to one another. Let's talk to our schools, talk to our teachers, and, you know, ask, what can I do? What can I do at home with my child? And is there anything I can do to help? Because sometimes also that's all a teacher needs, is just, you know, that question, because then I know that I'm not alone in this too, right? And the pandemic has taught us that we really do need to work together. It's the only way we'll get through all of these changing times.
And since you touched on special needs, what's the plan for Stella Maris?
Yeah, Stella Maris is, you know, very, very dear to my heart. And I have been engaged with Stella Maris, I can tell you, for many, many, many years. But I think a few days after I took office this time, I visited Stella Maris to sit down with them to discuss the challenges they were facing. So we have a lot of plans in place for Stella Maris, a lot of plans, including, you know, remodeling the entire institution. That's a project we're working on. We've already secured the financing through the IDB or CDB, part of our Belize reform project. So that has to take place. I mean, it's not even fit for special needs children. You know, so there's a lot of work to take place there. But we've also, you know, we were also working on the management of Stella Maris, bringing in new people. You know, and there's a lot of work that has to be done there. But we have a specific plan that we're working on for Stella Maris School, because those young people, those beautiful young people who attend school there, have suffered tremendously. I'm very, very concerned about them, because you know, talking to some of the families, they have been totally disengaged from education completely for the last year and a half. And their families are very, very concerned about how far they have regressed in terms of their development, their social development. So it's a critically important issue.
Yeah. I just want to say that, that there's a very dedicated and hardworking team at Stella Maris who've been making miracles out of that place.
Yeah.
But it does, I think, highlight one of the areas that I have heard from you so far is a priority, which is looking at special needs assessment and inclusive education. I want to ask you, Minister, this is, you have served as Minister of Education before. You've seen many different eras of education. What do you see as the greatest, beyond COVID, beyond pandemic thinking, what's the greatest challenge for you this time around?
Yeah, well, it's been hard to take a sort of a global view because we've been in emergency mode since day one, responding to the COVID crisis. But I came into the ministry understanding and appreciating that the education system was failing the people of Belize, failing our students. There's a lot of work to do in many critical areas. The big word for me is reform. Everything has to be reformed. The Ministry of Education, the bureaucracy that we preside over, has to be reformed. It has to be more efficient. It has to be more effective. It has to be more responsive to the needs of students and families. So there's a lot of work to do there. And again, I talked earlier about the curriculum. A more targeted, focused, relevant curriculum is critically important. Again, perhaps, if you want to narrow it down and focus on the greatest challenge really is teacher education. How do we equip our teachers with the tools they need to be more effective teachers? And how do we, in a sense, shift our culture, our vision of education away from a sort of bureaucratic approach to education about, as we came in, there was a great bureaucracy, the Teaching Services Commission, a lot of energy and time and focus on teacher licensing. And these things obviously are important. You have to have a structure in place. But our focus has to be on students, on student learning outcomes. That has to be our focus. So we are laser-like focused on that issue, on our students, our teachers. How can we strengthen our teachers' capacity to deliver quality education? And how can we make education more meaningful to our students? How can we make it more attractive to them? Technology is a big part of that, we know. Technology is, for these young people, is like water. They have to consume it all day, every day. And we have to understand and appreciate that in our education system. So our education system, it's not about students and teachers adapting to our education system. It's about our education system adapting to them and understanding where they are and how they learn. And in the case of teachers, how do they teach? What can we do to help them to be more, as I keep saying, more effective teachers? So that's our focus at the Ministry of Education. And later this month, I think on August 19th, we'll be having a press conference to highlight in a greater detail some of these initiatives that we're working on. A comprehensive press conference with all the entire management team of the Ministry of Education to present to the Belizean people our plans and initiatives in terms of curriculum reform, in terms of our Teacher Learning Institute, in terms of the COVID discussion we've had today, the recovery plan, the COVID response, all of these issues. So,
August 19th.
Please look out for that.
All right. And of course, you've said it very early on that the plan is to move forward with the reopening. And of course, you are subject to whatever the advice of the Ministry of Health offer to you. So we thank you for coming in and being able to share some of the details. And definitely, I know a lot of parents who are looking forward to the children going back to school physically. But they want to be sure that it's safe as well. So thank you. We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Marshall Nunez, the Disability Desk Coordinator, about some of the work they've been up to in ensuring equitable rights for persons with disabilities. Please, thank you.
This COVID update was brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
The Social Security Board, in collaboration with the Labor Department, takes this opportunity to remind insured persons of the requirements for compensation when on sick leave. Any employee who has worked with an employer for at least 2 months is entitled to 16 working days of sick leave with full pay every year. This is how it works. Upon approval of a sickness or injury benefit claim by SSD, 80% of the employee's weekly insurable earnings is paid as a Social Security benefit, and the difference in the employee's salary is paid by the employer. This is to ensure that the employee does not suffer any loss of wages when ill. After 16 days, compensation for sick leave is paid as a Social Security benefit only. Some conditions apply. This message is brought to you by the Social Security Board and the Labor Department. Social Security Board, safeguarding you, your family, your future.
Smart continues to expand its internet coverage countrywide to help you live a smarter life.
Our villagers are very happy. They are pleased to know that Smart went the extra mile to put a tower in our village so that our villagers can get live stream on their TVs and they can get their kids doing their online classes. I want to say to Smart, thank you for making it possible for us to get internet in Gardenia Village. We really do appreciate it.
Smart continues to take the internet and mobile services to communities across Belize. Now save even more when you bundle your Smart broadband with Smart mobile services. Smart, bringing people together.
How does the AstraZeneca vaccine work? The vaccine provides support to help your body develop immunity to the virus that causes COVID-19. The body is left with a supply of memory cells that will remember how to fight the virus. It takes a few weeks for the body to produce the antibodies after vaccination. How long does it take to build immunity after taking the first dose of the vaccine? There is protection 14 days after a person's first dose. However, that initial protection may decline over time, which is the reason why it is so important to get the second shot. How long after the first dose should one take the second dose? The second dose should be given between week 8 and week 12. Are there any deaths associated with the AstraZeneca vaccine? There have been no deaths associated with the AstraZeneca vaccine. Vaccines save lives. They remain the safest, most effective, and cost-effective medical tool developed. Increased uptake of the vaccine is the best way to stop this pandemic, save lives, and return to normalcy.
Imagine going through your entire day without the burden and risk of carrying cash on you. Belize's shift to digital wallets has begun with eCash. We can now skip the cash when collecting money or paying for our essentials, all while using a fast, easy, and secure platform. Simply add funds to your wallet via bank transfer or at an agent, and you're good to go. You will be able to make quick, easy payments simply by scanning QR codes. And best of all, it all happens just like that. Payments are as easy as clicking a link online, or scanning a QR code. Download the eCash app from the Google Play and Apple App Store today and take your first step into a cashless lifestyle. The future is here with eCash. For more information, visit www.e-cash.com or contact us via WhatsApp at 613-0257 to find out more.
Introducing Edam A cheese, the A+ Dutch cheese to hit the Belizean market. As the name says, it is of A-class quality, the best Dutch cheese in Belize. Edam A cheese is creamier, less salty, and simply more delicious. Don't be left out. Get your A cheese at a supermarket near you. A cheese exclusively distributed by Unitex Company Limited. Call us at 610-3626 or 610-8910. Follow us on Facebook at Unitex Belize.
And welcome back. Our final conversation for the morning is with the Disability Desk Coordinator for the Ministry of Human Development. We have been joined on set by Marshall Nunez. No stranger to the media. Good morning, Marshall.
Good morning. It's indeed a signal honor to be here with yourself and Marlene. It's a pleasure. Thanks.
Your role as the Disability Desk Coordinator. Let's begin by what all it entails and the public that you serve via this capacity.
As short as that question may be, it's very loaded, right? Because as the Disability Desk Coordinator, as the name implies, to coordinate all the stakeholders and agencies that serve the community of persons with disability across the country. The global figures indicate that about 15% of the world population are persons with disabilities. In the right to the Caribbean, in fact, just a few months ago, UNICEF did a study in Belize, and it indicates that about 15 to 18% of our population are persons with disabilities. So in the Caribbean, there are about 1 million people with disabilities. So you know that it's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Yeah. So in terms of meeting your target, the people that you are serving, what is that like in terms of listening to their concerns and their needs and being able to, through your ministry, being able to deliver either the services or the required services? Services. Let me leave it at that.
I'm glad that you said your ministry. While you refer to it as my ministry, I need to qualify that it's the Ministry of Human Development, Families and Indigenous Peoples Affairs. And it would be remiss of me not to really and truly thank the Minister Dolores Balderramos Garcia, the Minister of State, Elvia Vega Samos, and the CEO, Ms. Tanya Santos, for the insight and the initiative to create this desk. Fortunately, it is within the Ministry of Human Development, which essentially is the ministry that looks after the well-being of all the citizens of this country. As a matter of fact, if I could preempt an activity, tomorrow, supervisors from the Ministry of Human Development will be having a virtual meeting with almost all the stakeholders that cater to the needs of persons with disability, and they will be presenting to the group the services that the ministry offer in order to equip the stakeholders and empower them with the kind of services that is offered at the ministry. The vision for the disability desk is to improve the quality of life for persons with disabilities and their families by creating a a comprehensive network of programs and services to serve, enhance and empower persons with disabilities. So it all falls in within the very same structure, and no other ministry would have had the ability and the capacity to do what we're doing. So I'm glad that you brought that up, sir.
Do you work closely with NGOs? There's BACTA, for example.
If I start calling him, I might run into trouble. but that also gives me the opportunity to mention some very key partners.
Yeah.
BACTA is central, and if I could, please let me mention that Miss Roxanne Marin, who was the previous president of BACTA, has given up that position to become the secretary at the disability desk. And I need to mention that because she's a secretary within the public service, and with her expansive experience of working with the community of persons with disability, it really enhances what we do at the disability desk. So we do a lot of work with very many of the stakeholders. We meet with, we collaborate a lot with the Education Support Services, with NARCI, with the National Council for the Aging, HelpAge, the Belize Cancer Society, the Diabetes Association, the Kidney Association, Belize Brain Awareness Society, the CAIO Institute for the Deaf, quite a large number of agencies, NGOs. So yes, Marlene, we do.
Yeah. How do you prioritize the actions that you want to take? Because when you talk about people with diverse abilities, it's exactly that. It's diverse. You have a population who may not be able to see, a population who may not be able to hear, a population who has mobility challenges, and there's so many different needs that have to be met.
I want to clarify one thing that in the past people refer to diverse abilities. Everybody have diverse abilities. I deal specifically with people who have disabilities, varied types of disabilities, and I don't want to confuse what people feel. As I said, everybody have a diverse ability, but we deal specifically with persons with disabilities. Now, there are various types of disabilities. There are people with physical disability, mental disability, disabilities that are visible or invisible, sensory disabilities, and the categories are many, but fits for the most part within those broad categories. We work with those people. Ultimately, at the disability desk, it is our objective. There are two parallel highways that leads to empowerment and protection of persons' rights as human beings that lives with disability, and it's advocacy and legislation. And ultimately, at my desk, it is the hope that we can get to legislations. Over the past few months that I have been at the desk, we have been building the network, building the foundation, and then we will work towards sensitizing the nation. We can't advocate to people if they don't believe the mission. And so we need to do a lot of sensitization. And once we are comfortable that we have sensitized sufficient people, then we can advocate for them. When they are sensitive, then they will be able to include persons with disabilities. What we want is participation, inclusion, and non-discrimination of persons with disabilities. And so that necessitates some sensitization, and so that is the direction that we need to go.
When you talk legislation, Marshall, is it the belief or understanding that there isn't enough by way of laws and regulations to make it fair and equitable for persons with disabilities to participate in society?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Once again, I want to thank my minister, Minister Dolores. 2 weeks ago, she afforded me the opportunity to attend a Commonwealth conference. The conference was about participation, inclusion, non-discrimination of persons with disability through legislations. And the legislations need to come in compliance and conformity with what is required by the United Nations Convention for the Person with Disability. There are 52 articles in that convention. Specifically, there are 3 areas that really and truly the legislation will point out. I think Article 4, 15, and 34. At the conference, they came up with a framework for the establishment of legislation. I would be remiss if I didn't say this. Belize signed the United Nations Convention in May of 2011. And in 1 month time, in June of 2011, we ratified the convention. I think that is absurd. Obviously, there was no consultation with any of the stakeholders. And so, since June of 2011 until now, in 2021, absolutely nothing, well, I'm going to take that back, till about November of 2020. Nothing took place, absolutely nothing. And so now we are in a position where we need to be doing quite a bit of stuff simultaneously in order to get us on stream with what's taking place within our region and the rest of the world. And so it is a lot of work.
It is definitely unfortunate when you think of how our society has not been one that has progressed to be more inclusive of persons with disabilities. And I want to ask, just in looking at whether it is fulfilling the obligations of the convention or simply being able to ensure a better quality of life, there are some basic needs that are unmet or difficult to meet if you are a person who has a disability, and it includes accessing services, it includes access to transportation, it includes the possibility of getting employment or being discriminated and not getting employment. So how do you, and I know these are big, big issues to be solved, but talk to me about what the strategy is. There are things like, you know, can you get on a bus? Will you have assistance to get on a bus? If someone is in a wheelchair, is there adequate support to get them on? And should buses now be mandated to have that? So let's talk about the real core quality of life issues and how you can get there.
You can't see me under this mask, but I'm smiling. Because on Thursday, collaborative group, which includes BAPDA, Miss Christy Almeida from Belize Disabled People Forum, and the founder of Autism Belize, the National Council for the Aging, the Disability Desk, and the Department of Transport. Over the past few weeks, we have been working on a training, and the training commences on Thursday. The training is for traffic wardens and terminal workers, sensitization, orientation, and a little bit of introduction to the etiquettes of working with persons with disability. The objective is to create a priority arrangement for persons with disability on public transportation. To the boarding, so we'll prioritize boarding of persons with disability, inclusive of those people with wheelchairs. Priority seating on the public transportation, and those are going to be demarcated and color-coded for persons who are with disabilities. So,
like how there's the special parking spot.
The department is also looking at designated disability parking. That is already in process, and we discussed that with them, and so that is also ongoing.
But how enforceable will this be? Because I think it was 2 years ago, Council of Aging and BAPTA did the Front of the Line campaign, which was exactly that. Give priority to pregnant, elderly, and persons with disabilities.
Let me tell you how effective it was. I was given an example. Elderly person went into a bank in Belmopan, and the person, obviously elder, and so somebody, the security I think, or someone tell her, listen to me, you need to move up to the line. They took a seat and then they brought her up to the front of the line. There was another man in there who threw a fit because they moved that person up to the front of the line. And you know what? Maybe the entire population in the bank let him have it. And he said, don't you know about the front of the line?
Oh, good.
And so that was very pleasing
Yeah.
for me to hear.
But so when it comes to the transportation changes, these will be enforced or voluntary?
No, enforced. Enforced. The Department of Transport, this is the first level of training, and then from there we'll go to implementation and regulations that are going to become enforceable. So we're starting first with training the people who work at the terminals and the wardens. The objective is at some point to include that type of training even with the taxis, which are public transportation, you know, because no one should be left behind.
And so that's coming up very soon. Let's talk about other areas like discrimination for persons with disability.
That is a very important part. As I said again, it comes from sensitization. Over the past maybe 6 weeks, we have done a lot of sensitization training with the municipal bodies, all 9 municipalities, sensitization and again disability etiquette. We chose to start at the municipalities because they are the local leaders.
Yeah.
And if they buy in, then they will ensure that within their municipality that carries on. You know, I also, if you allow me, I would also want to mention that over the past 5 weeks, they have also created the National Special Needs and Disability Committee, which is a subcommittee of NEMO, which deals primarily with the sheltering, transporting and evacuation of persons with disability in the event that there is a storm. Somehow they asked me to chair the committee, but it has a team of co-chairs.
Let me interject quickly there, Marshall.
Feel free.
The obvious thought that comes to mind is, why wasn't this thought up a long time ago? In the sense that while there are those of us who are fit and healthy in terms of the physical sense, who would in a time of a national disaster be able to move about on our own to seek shelter, then it stands to reason that something should have been put in place from the beginning to be able to address the needs of persons who can't do so on their own.
Sani, that's a political question. Because for these things to be accomplished, there has to be the political will to get it done. Under the People's United Party Plan Belize Manifesto, a significant portion have been designated to the rights and dignity of persons with disabilities. So this government, hence the reason the First Lady and Special Envoy has a lot of experience in working with persons with disabilities. If I go back to the point I made a little earlier, in 2011 we signed the convention and 1 month later we ratified it. There was absolutely no interest to get things done, or else you would have consulted with the people who needs to benefit from signing that convention. The truth is that everybody is entitled to their human rights, right? But for persons with disability, it goes more than just human rights. We need to meet people where their need starts. And so we need to ensure that we do the right thing. We have started conversation in terms of universal designs. I am exceedingly pleased in my heart. Yesterday, a school building was inaugurated in the village of Bella Vista. A couple of weeks ago, one in Santa Cruz and one in Belmopan and Cayo. These buildings are equipped with ramps. And yesterday at the inauguration, that new building in Bella Vista have wheelchair accessible bathrooms. We realize that from the Ministry of Education perspective, the buildings are more inclusive. When we build buildings with universal designs, we are not giving special treatment to persons with disability, but we are including them to make their lives more comfortable. When you build a building with adequate ramps and adequate bathroom facilities, ordinary or people without disability can also use it.
Yeah.
So it's not that you're affecting how they function, but you're including the people who needs it the most.
But what about ensuring the right education and information? Because there are two things here. One, sometimes there's a willingness, and we interviewed a spokesperson for Live and Let Live who spoke of people building ramps that the incline is wrong, or building a ramp but not having a wheelchair accessible bathroom. So there is a willingness, but perhaps not an understanding of what needs to be done. How do you bridge that gap?
The first thing we have to say is we have to commend those people for the effort. The deficiency there is that the people who rightfully, and using this very loosely, quote unquote, are the authority, were never consulted. If you consult the right people, you will go to the universal designs, like you rightfully said, the incline must be appropriate. You know, so we need to first commend them for the initiative, but it has to be done right. Sometimes people will build a building and in second thought will go and throw in a ramp, though inadequate, but they're trying. We are hoping that now that we are speaking out, we are advocating and we are sensitizing, that they will come to the right people. Let me give you another example. The FFB Stadium, a few years ago, the FFB consulted with us, with BAPDA, and because they were to make sure that they put proper ramps, adequate bathroom facilities, ticket booths, and they have upgraded the FFB Stadium to be very able and capable. It's wheelchair accessible. They have a particular section that is disabled friendly. We had several meetings, several consultation meetings with FFB. They got it right. And so we need to get it right. The rest of our organizations need to get it right. We haven't...
The building codes currently, do they enforce that you have to have disability access?
That I was just going to make that point. We need to meet with the Minister of Infrastructure because we want to impress on the Central Building Authority and even the building units of the municipalities to ensure that we look at that. You know, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. These universal designs and access are available. So we can find them and ensure that those things are put in place to make the lives of a community of persons with disability easier.
And in some areas, it's just a matter of retrofitting. I mean, you do have structures that have been there for quite some time, but in terms of bringing it up to speed, it's just a matter of retrofitting to cater to that.
Another improvement to the bus terminals will mean to put in ramps. It's just a little bit of retrofitting. It's going to take it's going to have a cost, but to ensure that the bathrooms become wheelchair friendly, you know. So it's going to require a little bit of infrastructural development, but we need to get there. Mind you that, as I said, for more than 10 years we did nothing. We are doing as much as we can quickly, but we still have a long way to go. We have a long way to go.
And it needs the buy-in of the community, and I think that's where you started off with advocacy, and I know that's an important role, but it's also getting people to understand that this isn't about special treatment, this is just about everyone having the same rights and access as everyone else.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, we are glad to hear from you as to the progress, as to how things are going with the Disability Desk. And thank you for coming in and giving us this update.
It's indeed a pleasure. I hope you don't get tired of me because we'll have to come back over and over again. But thanks very much for the opportunity. Greatly appreciate it.
All right, and with that, we're going to go ahead and take our final break. And when we come back, we'll have a wrap.
Imagine going through your entire day without the burden and risk of carrying cash on you. Belize's shift to digital wallets has begun. With eCash, we can now skip the cash when collecting money or paying for our essentials, all while using a fast, easy, and secure platform. Simply add funds to your wallet via bank transfer or at an agent, and you're good to go. You will be able to make quick, easy payments simply by scanning QR codes. And best of all, it all happens just like that. Payments are as easy as clicking a link online or scanning a QR code. Download the eCash app from the Google Play and Apple App Store today and take your first step into a cashless lifestyle. The future is here with eCash. For more information, visit www.e-cash.com or contact us via WhatsApp at 613-0257 to find out more.
The TV you love is always with you, from live TV, sports, and on-demand titles. Choose your plan today. Plans start as low as $15 per month. My TV, entertainment, anytime, anywhere.
Es un hecho. Únicamente con Smart obtienes todo realmente ilimitado. Solo con Smart obtienes datos ilimitados en cualquier momento. Mientras que con el otro proveedor solo son datos dobles los fines de semana. Con datos ilimitados todos los días no hay necesidad de esperar, así que es un hecho que nuestros planes ilimitados superan a la competencia. Por lo tanto, no permita que le digan cómo y cuándo usar sus datos y obtenga llamadas, mensajes de texto y datos ilimitados. Vive la verdadera experiencia de planes ilimitados con Smart. Es un hecho. Haga el cambio y viva Smart.
The Social Security Board, in collaboration with the Labor Department, takes this opportunity to remind insured persons of the requirements for compensation when on sick leave. Any employee who has worked with an employer for at least 2 months is entitled to 16 working days of sick leave with full pay every year. This is how it works. Upon approval of a sickness or injury benefit claim by SSD, 80% of the employee's weekly insurable earnings is paid as a Social Security benefit, and the difference in the employee's salary is paid by the employer. This is to ensure that the employee does not suffer any loss of wages when ill. After 16 days, compensation for sick leave is paid as a Social Security benefit only. Some conditions apply. This message is brought to you by the Social Security Board and the Labor Department. Social Security Board, safeguarding you, your family, your future.
And we're back. And we want to say thank you for tuning in this morning. We had an extended conversation with the Minister and CEO of the Ministry of Education, talking about the reopening of schools, and confirmed again that come the end of this month, there will be a resumption of face-to-face classes.
Yeah.
And the only way that won't happen is if the Ministry of Health advises that they can't.
Well, certainly depending on the number of cases around that time, right?
Yeah.
So it's contingent upon where we are in terms of the number of active cases and if it's feasible for face-to-face instructions to resume.
Yeah.
I think...
Okay.
No, I was about to jump to the other conversation that we had with Marshall Nunes earlier. I think it's a step in the right direction to be able to look at how we can make accommodations by way of their fundamental rights for persons with disabilities. And I think by having a desk where we can now be able to look after the needs and provide the services for these individuals is a good thing.
Absolutely. And I'm happy to hear some of the plans that they'll be rolling out very soon, including the access to transportation I think that when you look at the fact that some people are born this way and some people may lose limbs or a certain ability as time goes by, and you never know if it could be me tomorrow. That I'm adjusting to a new way of life. I would never want to be robbed of my independence of being able to move where I want to go, when I want to go there. And so it's simply being able to afford them that access through public transportation. So they're going to get moving with that training this week. And it sounds like they have quite a bit more to tackle as well.
Well, he did admit that there's quite a long way ahead, but I mean, it's incremental in progress. So.
I mean, you know, I'm always fascinated anytime I travel and you go to a more developed country and there are people who are in wheelchairs or have some level of disability that are just working in all areas. You know, from the minute you arrive at an airport to whatever activity you undertake, you will find persons who are included within the community. And it is so uplifting to see because we have seen how in our own country we struggle to be able to do that.
Well, the thing about it is, and this is from my point of view, having seen the growth in a manner of speaking over the years, right? We went from, in a sense, feeling sorry for
and
hiding or treating them differently to now where inclusivity is so paramount that we treat them that they're normal. I mean, they just have different abilities than we do, but they are able to carry out some of the very same functions as any other person in society who has vision intact, their mental faculties, their physical ability to move around and what have you.
Yeah.
So I'm impressed by the fact that, you know, Marshall was able to very articulately express what those needs are and how they're going to go about addressing them.
And working along with organizations that have been doing the groundwork. So we definitely wish them the best. And of course, this was a check-in to see what they're doing so far.
Yeah.
But that's all the time we have for today. Remember, if you'd like to contact us, send us an email at oye@channel5belize.com. Find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ and on Instagram at OYEBelize. Remember to tune in tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes.
To start your morning right.
Until then, keep your eyes, your mind,
and your hearts open.
We'll see you soon. Enjoy your day, Belize.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.